How you been?
So I've actually wrote out yesterday in my COVID haze. Was writing out kind of like, what do I want? What some
Yeah,
things. And I was thinking, hey, make more videos. Like, just you obviously it's fun for you, Jesse. In my conversation with myself, it's fun for you to do. Just keep doing it. It's not like I don't have any expectations whatsoever with it. So I think gives me the strength, or that's strength to not care what happens, but just to do it because you like it.
it is strength because you're just enjoying the process. You're not attached to any outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
So in the whole spiritual field, that's a whole realm of just like surrender and let the universe flow you into wherever you go. And really, then you're on the highest path. That's the other thing, to just know, like, I'm on the highest path. I'm living at my highest, best potential path because it's the thing that happened. Of course, that means that we can actually flow and progress and evolve to somewhere else. But like, to really appreciate the creative flow of something without any expectation is like so nourishing, you know?
Yeah. Hey, look at that. We're getting right into it, man. I
Oh,
knew it wasn't going to take long.
well, and that goes into relationships too. Like, I think relationships are interesting, how much we expect certain things, even like a friend relationship or a boss relationship or a primary partner relationship, versus like, hey, I just trust that you're going to show up at your best and I'm going to show up at my best, and whatever comes is natural and flowy. And there's just, nothing is contrived or inauthentic or manipulated. Like, well, you didn't do this for me, man. To really just trust it.
Yeah, that's interesting. I attribute the success so far anyway. My marriage with Anna, like there was no I think we both, I don't know if she did. I know I did approach it with no expectations, and everything just flowed. I mean, even to the proposal, and everything's been kind of just easy, and I feel like I kind of surrendered to where I was supposed to go in the first place with her. And I think and I don't think I did anything, to deserve that or whatever. I just sort of,
Yeah.
let things happen. I think that's why it's been so great.
Mm-hmm.
There's no weird stuff like, I don't know, I guess that littered past relationships where I had a dog in the hunt, or was overly anxious, or tried to force something, or
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Isn't that funny? It's just like, it's one of those things where, and so even when it's difficult, to let that difficulty flow, to know like, this is supposed to be here for a reason, for my expansion, for my progression. That's real ownership. Because even if you're like kind of thrashy or squirming because something's difficult, that is resistance. And really, that's a desire for something different or a different outcome. And you feel like you can control it and really just flow with it. And just, you can really, like, when you really trust in the flow or surrender, it really is, similar language to having faith in God, right? Whatever God brings you, having faith in that path.
Yeah.
The more healing I do around religion, the more I realize that it's all connected. It's all the same. So
Yeah, it's interesting though. I've been such the opposite, if I think about it. I'm like, who was that guy? But I also don't know how I got to being more in the flow.
mm-hmm.
I'm not really sure what it comes from. Maybe it was from trying to force things in the past and realizing how futile it was, or making it worse. Maybe there's some kind of realization. I don't know. But and some of this maybe it's not up to us, or maybe we're just kind of experiencing
Yeah.
the evolution, and we don't necessarily need to take credit for it if we're evolving either.
Yeah. Well, we are definitely the experiencers, and we're creating it at the same time. This is infinite. Every single thing is a paradox. Every single thing. It's just it's like we are creating this and we are experiencing it. In fact, we need that separation of feeling like we're out of control, and then to realize, to come back home and recognize, actually, this is what we dialed up for ourselves. That's the way I see it.
It is interesting, and that's comforting. The polarity of everything is
Yeah.
paradox, polarity.
Yeah.
I find is comforting. It's kind of like, okay, I didn't feel this way yesterday and feel the opposite of today, and that's okay. That's kind of what life is, and that can, I think, could freak someone out, or it maybe used to freak me out. Well, why? This seems so righteous the one time, and now it doesn't feel that way. I think it's just
I think we're
that's life, man.
yeah, we're meant to experience all of it, the
Hmm.
entire spectrum. We're meant to experience the pain and and the joy. We're meant to experience to be in the energy of like the victim, and to also sometimes be in the energy of the perpetrator.
Hmm.
We are all capable of doing all those things, and then supposed to be that, you know.
Or being completely one with God or in the flow, and then being the total opposite and living behind the veil two
Hmm.
at times.
Hmm.
I think those are, to me, are becoming acceptable occurrences. Like, I can't be on all the time. It's okay if I'm
Hmm.
not. And if I get frustrated by not being on all the time, then I'm just gonna sabotage myself.
That's a
but
good point. Yeah.
but to just accept, hey, it's like, sometimes you see it, sometimes you don't. Um and especially in what appears to be an environment that doesn't want itself discovered. That's a big Alan Watts thing. you know it's kind of like,
Ooh, that's
it's
cool.
it's meant to be hidden doesn't mean it's hidden all the time, but it's I shared this quote with you recently about the universe goes boo and then jumps at itself and then laughs at itself for jumping.
That's paradoxical, right? It's all
Yeah,
there, right? It's
yeah,
like, what's cool about that? I remember when you texted that to me. What's cool about that is it's like the universe is setting up its own game of hide and seek, right?
yeah, yeah.
Because I mean, and that's how I see the whole thing, like in oneness, in where we all come from. We are all one. We are all the universe. Really, we just are, and there's no parity. So we create this separation so that we can have these games of hide and seek, and you know, going away. It's contraction and expansion and contraction.
Hmm.
I mean, even in that's found everywhere. Like we go on the hero's journey. We go away so we can find home again, right?
Hmm.
Or even the Big Bang, the idea that the universe is infinitely expanding. I mean, to just like an infinite number of years. Well, in my mind, that will eventually start to come together.
And then it's Bitcoin to the moon.
And then Bitcoin.
I had a thought that I lost it. But hey, that's okay. Hey, real quick, I want to see these. I'm burning up in these headphones. I want to change my audio real quick.
Do it.
It's interesting. I actually got some friends that are getting a little bit upper echelons in the metal uh, industry too lately. That would be fun to maybe interview. But one guy was my first radical metal. He's playing with Dallas in a Megadeth, and then these two other guys that used to be in Megadeth now. They're calling themselves Kings of Thrash.
Cool.
um, and so I think it'd be cool to talk to him again, or maybe he could give me some of the other guys in there.
Well, how would you describe the metal? I mean, me not knowing, right? So metal had its rise in like the early 80s and then into the 90s as it got to like mainstream with, Metallica Black Album, for example. That's the very height, which I remember reading an article on something. But to go back to this, and then it sort of died down just as everything else did, as far as, grunge and everything like that. But of course it continues, and especially as people like you and in Gen X continue to love it, and are new people discovering it is where I was going with that.
I think it's another vibration, man. Metal was like
Yeah,
this, crested in the 80s, you
yeah.
know, and maybe early 90s, and then grunge probably, I don't know if it's fair to say it took over, but I mean, metal kind of died down. I was always into it. I never stopped listening to it. I loved it.
Yeah, you really are just diehard. And what's cool though is like when did like Mastodon emerge and get into its rise? Like when?
I don't know. Maybe it's fair to say that it's metal is now on the uprise again. It might be even cresting again. I think Mastodon was part of that rise again. At
Yeah,
least,
it's like Mastodon. Those guys grew up on Metallica, right? And Megadeth
yeah, they actually toured with Metallica and Mastodon, or in a Slayer.
and Slayer. So
Uh,
what are those guys like 5 years younger or are they like 10 years, like 5 years younger? So they were like they really looked up to those bands.
maybe
And
10 years. Actually, probably more like 10 years. Yeah.
that's cool, man. I mean, that's without knowing too much about them. I mean, the very obviously like an international, just incredible act. I mean, that's
Yeah, they're big, I guess. It's like a biggest kept secret or something. I don't know. You don't when you think of metal, you think of Metallica, and you'll think of maybe Slipknot or something. I don't think people that aren't into metal even really have heard of Mastodon. Maybe they have. Maybe now a little bit more. But
I know that you're really big, and I had heard of Mastodon, but not having really. I couldn't have named a song.
yeah,
I knew that they were legit metal. Continuing on, but and then you say Slipknot. Do you personally like Slipknot?
I don't.
No.
I don't
Well,
really.
it's sort of like it's like taking, how hair bands took rock and roll into that sort of a costuming direction. Is that what that Slipknot sort of takes metal into a costuming direction? But
I don't know why I'm not really. There's a couple songs I like. I'm not sure I really pinpointed why I don't like them per se. I mean, I think for me it was just when the budding was ripe, what seeded what got seeded there in my musical garden, and it was very specifically thrash metal. I think is maybe one way to say it. And Slipknot, I think there's elements of thrash, but it's also something else. There's like there's new metal. I never got into that, like Korn, uh, things like that. Limp Bizkit. Actually, Limp Bizkit. I'd have to be honest. I did like some of that stuff when it first came out, but
cool.
I didn't think it was metal. But and so I'm not really sure what it is about Slipknot. I'm not a big fan of that Corey Taylor guy, who is
I
the
don't know. I don't know who that is.
I don't. It doesn't really relate to the music. The music's a lot of like about pain and depression, and I want to hear about Vikings, bro. Like I want to hear about Rasputin in the lyrics of my metal songs. And I think
Well, yeah,
that's
you like the strength of it. You like there's, well, you know what you said in our earlier conversation. You said that there was something about metal that demands and gets respect.
I said that.
Yeah, just as a teenager, but you also said that about the Marines, right? You wanted respect.
Oh well, that's yeah. I think that's well. I So you saying that back to me, I think there are two different things. The reason I got into metal, I think, was you're angry. I was angry. I think I don't know if any kid, any male especially, isn't angry at that age in junior high. Just pissed off and frustrated and all that kind of stuff. And so metal was sort of like an opiate or
A healthy outlet.
calmed all
Creative.
that stuff down, or it could match or vibrate at
Yeah,
what I was vibrating at.
that's so true, man. So true. that's like basic manifestations. Like that's the vibration you're putting out there, even if it's low key, but that's what you feel inside. Well, of course, you're going to find something like metal that really just you love it. I mean, I was, at the time, I was two clicks away from that, as I was like really into grunge, and so grunge was angsty, but it actually had a more, how would you say it? It's like grunge as opposed to metal was just a little bit, well, there's more melodic elements to it, and it was just more sloshy or messy, but it was messy in a different way, and sort of like a brooding artist way. It was more emotional. What do you think?
I like. There's definitely a lot of grunge. I remember you and me listening to 10, Pearl
Yeah,
Jam's 10,
yeah,
and just dying over it, like loving it. And I love that. I love it because, all right, that was great. For some reason, it didn't trump metal, but for me,
yeah.
but I like the lyrics too. I'm really a big lyrics guy.
Hmm.
So if the lyrics, and I remember grunge being, whether it's Nirvana, Soundgarden, or Pearl Jam, all those lyrics were
Yeah,
really interesting. They're
yeah,
interesting lyrics. It still might have been about depression, sadness, but I guess like with Slipknot or um, some of these other bands, it's just like I'm mad, meh,
yeah,
meh, meh, meh.
yeah.
And they're not very. Speaking of a college class that I took a lot of, learned a lot from, was poetry classes, where it really put a high value on, you want the reader to kind of be there. How do you get the reader there? How could you make the reader smell something with words? How could you make the reader feel something with words? I think Eddie Vedder's a poet.
Yeah,
And same with Chris Cornell. Um,
yeah.
I
So
think those guys had really, and they're interesting lyrics. It wasn't just like,
really was.
like Papa Roach is a good example of what I don't like. Like cut my life into pieces.
Exactly. That's
My
so,
last resort.
that
Suffocation.
to me was made, that shit to me is made for radio, right? That's like, that was like K-Rock on repeat. I was like, oh man, change the channel. So funny.
Well, there's not a lot of, there's nothing very intellectual about it, and it's funny that I'm saying Metallica or Slayer might be more intellectual, but I absolutely stand by that. Like even Slayer, dude, like their lyrics they're really poetic and illustrative. Like I keep thinking of this line, confetti of flesh.
Whoa. That's
Confetti
so,
of flesh. On one of their songs, War Ensemble, talking about war of someone getting blown up. Confetti of
yeah.
flesh. Like to me, that's so poetic.
It's
It's brutal.
it's brutal and poetic. It is. I mean, it really, oh yeah, it's so incredible. There's violence, right? Which denotes, just aggression and rebellion, and just like anger. Not angst, as you will. Like angst to me, the connotation is like sort of like a repressed anger. Angst, like you're, but anger is like blasting that shit out.
Yeah, it's weird
Confetti.
because that the resonation started there at that age with, and anger was a key part of it, I think. But I think it just planted a seed, and now it's not. Now I'm not usually an angry person, um, and so I think it's sort of a residual seed that I'm still into the fast, angry stuff, but I don't necessarily feel that way. But it did evolve too, like with Mastodon. Um, I think you would probably really appreciate Crack the Sky, for example, is one of their epic albums. And it's all about like a journey with where a guy leaves his body and does like astral projection or whatever. And then ends up inhabiting I probably got the story wrong, but inhabiting Rasputin. So you got like this interesting like Russian history as part of the song, but you also have all this spiritual stuff happening, um, like spiraling up through the crack in the sky, leaving material world behind. He's like, I see your face in constellations. The martyr has given his life for mine. Like things like that. I was just like, whoa, man.
Hey, what's the one that you sent? Let's see, because I was asking TikTok, like, what's like the long song that you just love that has like takes you through multiple acts? What was that song called? Mastodon.
Oh, it probably, I don't remember now, but it probably was from Crack the Sky. I mean, they got one song where it's like 5 parts to it. And it's even called like part one, then named as part two. I can't remember the names
Well, I
now.
actually saved that YouTube video because I probably listened to it like 5 times, and it is I've got such respect. Like when I think about, let's see, what I remember thinking about that was, I mean, for sure, it's like multiple songs woven together, and you just even see influences, even like Zeppelin type influences. You know, Zeppelin. In my mind, rock and roll, all roads lead through Zeppelin. But then you have to go to the Beatles before that. But for me, there's so much. Man, Zeppelin is like an all-time great for me.
Yeah, I don't think any rock band or heavy metal band
Yeah,
is going to be about Zeppelin or the Beatles. They're all going to say them. Um,
I really do see this clearly. Like it was Beatles before Zeppelin, and even like the annual timeline. That's what it looks like. But once they went through the Zeppelin buzzsaw, then everyone from Nirvana to Pearl Jam to Guns N' Roses to Metallica, every one of them, you just see Zeppelin. Okay, well, hit me up. Last thing, hit me up with this. You haven't told me anything about your organization.
oh, yes. Thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah.
Yeah, curious what you think. So we're in our 10th year, at least 10th 501c3 legal year. We were
Cool.
running I think we started really in 2012, but officially we're an organization in 2014. And it's never been a very large organization, but I feel like we've done some big things over the years. But it started. I became friends with this guy in Liberia when I was stationed there as a Marine. He was the principal of the school where the soldiers' kids would go to school, the Liberian soldiers' kids. And I volunteered and taught like English and basic math stuff because there wasn't a whole lot to do when I was over there. It was kind of a goosey program, to be honest. But so I volunteered with him, and we became friends. And then he's like, "Hey, let's start an organization." And I'm like, "I don't know, man." But that was like I was a little fearful of the commitment, um, and it was a commitment because we're here, we're still doing it. But so I was trying to think what it is that I would want to start over there. One of the things that was very annoying or frustrating, irritating over there is just everybody. We have built Liberia. Liberia is basically the only American colony. We sent slaves there to free them. There's a lot of good intentions there. It was under James Monroe. That's why the capital of Liberia is Monrovia. But Liberia got started as a country by the slaves we shipped back in order to say, hey, we want to do the right thing, whether it was right or not. We want to free slaves and give them their own land.
Wow.
And so there's all kinds of debate whether.
Where is Liberia? Like where in Africa?
It's Western Africa. So you have what was the blood diamond movie? What country blood diamonds? I forget now.
I don't know.
There's Ghana. Ghana is right next to it. In the middle. Liberia is on the coast, western coast.
Okay. Wow.
But anyway, so I'm not sure where all the history. Wow, I was sharing all that now, but anyway, but Liberia has been so dependent on foreign aid, like many countries, and it's a handout culture for the most part. And that was what was frustrating for me. It wasn't like, hey, how can I make something happen in my country? to where I can feed, financially take care of myself and my family. It was more
Right.
like, let me ask Americans who are here. Let me
Mm.
ask Chinese who are here. And it was a culture I wanted. If I was going to start an organization, it would be something to counter that mentality.
Yeah. Right.
And so it became we created a vocational school. So basically, uh, vocations they can learn that makes sense in the country to where they can actually make
Right.
money on their own to provide for themselves and their family. So what does that end up being? Well, like one of them was computer A plus certification, the Microsoft A plus certification. That's one of our big programs where it teaches them how to fix computers because everybody's got a laptop and everybody's got a laptop that doesn't work.
Yeah. Right.
And so classes in hardware, but then things like tailoring. That's actually been pretty successful and kind of right in line with the spirit of things, where we are partnered with a manufacturer of sorts over there, where they train our ladies or whoever wants to learn it. Sorry, I'm burping. And then they get hired, and that's kind of like beautiful. That's one way to do it that I'm
Perfect.
quite pleased with. That people are making money because they get trained through our partnerships. There's catering, cosmetology, hairdressing, all stuff that we can provide instruction for, and they can take out into the community and make money. So now, what it's evolved into, we still do all those things, but it's also basically turned into a hub in the community. It's a school now. It's kindergarten through the end of high school, and then you have these vocational classes on the side, and then things like adult literacy. Um, that's going on too. The big milestones for us were like 3 years ago, we bought land because we were renting. We had a terrible landlord that was always jacking up the price. So we have our own land, and then we built a building. It's called the Ma Seipel Learning Center, named after my late mother.
Wow, man. Damn.
They call everybody Ma. If you're a woman, you're a mother, they call you Ma. But it's funny because my mom's initials are MA. So they named this structure after her, and just really great. And I'm very proud of how far we've come. I'm really, really just glad we bought land. I'm glad we have a building. The thing that I'm not sure is ever, the whole mission though was to kind of our motto is own your own future, taken directly from Stephen Covey, Seven
Beautiful.
Habits of Highly Effective People. I'm not sure that lesson has ever penetrated per se. I mean, I think I don't know how good a job we've done at that. I think it's cool. We started a school and whatnot, but there's a million schools in Liberia. Um, so the K through, well, I'm glad there's a community center now for
Yeah.
students in this area. It's in Dwazan, Liberia. I'm not sure that was in line with at least the initial mission, but I'm glad it's there, and I'm glad there's a center hub community where folks can go to. But I do question how effective we have been with the whole owning your own future and trying to shift that mentality, because the whole kind of the grand epic goal is to be that kind of beacon in Liberia to shift the culture,
Yeah. Right.
is to show that folks, if they go through our school or go through our training, you can actually be very successful. And we're not there. So
How is that?
the
How's
thing
that
that
not?
and I mean, we're there in some respects, like the tailoring program and that kind of stuff. It's all great, really cool stuff. But the nut I've been trying to crack for 10 years, basically, is I kind of want to turn it, if there's a way to do it, turn it into some kind of um, business. that supports the community.
Well, so what's the state of the school, like bird's eye view? Like, how many students? Where does funding come from? There's a building and land. People go there to learn vocational skills.
Yes, and they go to just learn your basic K through 9 or K through 12, kindergarten, preschool, kindergarten, high school experience kind of thing, and learn your basic courses there. It's all accredited for
Cool.
both the school, regular school, and the vocational schools.
Who gets paid? Like who shows up and gets paid?
So the staff. Well, this is why our budget just increased, and that's why I was saying, hey, I might hit you up for a donation. But I've been able, for the most part, to run this whole thing. I raise all the money, and it's really from a handful of people, and quite honestly, a lot of it comes from myself. But I've been able to run this show for the last few years on only like $8,000 a year. Now it's just increased because I just agreed to figure out how to raise money to roughly about 15,000 for this next year, and that's probably where it's going to be going forward until it goes up again. And that's just because we're in danger of losing the folks that come to teach.
Yeah, that's good. I appreciate that you. Well, I appreciate what you've done since inception. I mean, that's a big deal, right? You have a place, you have a program, you have a place where people go, where students go, and so it is interesting. What's cool is that you're like, well, let's just zoom out and just like, what are we doing here from the get-go? Like entirely, what are we doing here? And so,
so I think, in my mind, the last few years, a lot of this stuff is being funded, honestly, really mostly from me, and a couple close friends. And I've been pleased with it. It hasn't been, 8,000 a year is not really a whole lot of money to do what it's doing positively in the community. But and so, so part of me's like, if this thing's going to grow, maybe I'm not the right guy. I thought about that too, because maybe it needs a full-time person that can actually, maybe a retired person or something like that can really commit to it. I'm not hinting at you, by the way, though, if you're interested. But that's on the table. I actually talked to a guy who is curious about taking over for me, so I'm gonna, I don't know, see what his deal is, but that can take it to the next level, where it can actually, someone who can devote the time it's going to take and the energy to have the impact that at least we initially wanted with financially.
Oh man, that's cool. I see where you're coming from. All right, man. Well, get to feeling better.
Thanks, dude. Yeah, it's starting to come on again too. It's weird. COVID's weird.
Oh yeah.
You get a day where you feel good. I felt good this morning, and then I'm gonna lay down.
Go lay down. All right, man. Good hanging out with you.
All right, brother. I'll talk to you soon.